All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, nobody should be surprised by today's news that New York Jets team owner Woody Johnson decided to fire the team's general manager, Joe Douglas. We all knew that this was a make or break season for the Jets. And unfortunately for the Jets, they've been broken. Okay. And now Joe Douglas joins former Jets head coach Robert Saleh as people with whom Woody Johnson has fired in the last 2 months. Now, on Sunday, I talked about the need for a house cleaning for the New York Jets. And now you can expect this team to have a new head coach and a new general manager for next season. But will this regime result in real changes for the Jets? And I'm going to say no, because the Jets continue to have a Woody Johnson problem. He is making a very compelling case to be one of, if not the worst, current team owners in the National Football League. And that says a lot when you think about the likes of David Tepper, who's running the Carolina Panthers literally into the ground. Okay. We have now had nearly 25 full seasons of Woody Johnson as the Jets team owner, and the numbers are alarming. This is going to be the 14th consecutive season for the Jets where they have missed the postseason, and honestly, that's very hard to fathom in today's NFL. You think about it with the expanded postseason, the expanded regular season, three wild card spots in each league. I mean, heck, you've got 16 teams in each conference, rather, and seven of those teams make the postseason. But this is where the Jets are with this, and that's how bad that they've been. Since Woody Johnson purchased the Jets back in 2000, he has had seven different general managers, eight different head coaches, and 21 different starting quarterbacks. And if anybody has followed me on this platform or others, I always say something that I live by. You cannot, and I repeat, cannot have that much consistent turnover at those three key positions, three most important positions on any NFL team: general manager, head coach, and quarterback. You cannot have that much turnover at those positions and expect to win. And this is where the Jets are. The last time that the Jets made the playoffs, okay, you got to go back to the 2010 AFC Championship game when they lost to the Steelers. Who knew when the Jets left the field that evening in Pittsburgh that 14 years later we still be talking about this team not making the playoffs? The last time the Jets made the postseason, Brett Favre was still playing in the NFL. He was finishing up with the Minnesota Vikings, and Aaron Rodgers was about to win his first and only Super Bowl championship. And okay, that kind of correlates to what I'm going to say here, because speaking of Rodgers, you can make a very strong case that his acquisition from the Green Bay Packers by the Jets could be one of, if not the worst in NFL history. You have a guy that basically came in to town riding his white horse and was met with a hero's welcome and was expected to be the guy to get the Jets over the hump. Remember last year, prior to Rodgers getting hurt, you had multiple people talking about the Jets, being a Super Bowl contender. Same thing this year. Even with Rodgers coming back from the Achilles injury, you had people talking about the Jets being legit Super Bowl contenders. You don't hear that. These are the expectations that Aaron Rodgers was met with, or people expected him to live up to, and instead, the Jets have gotten themselves a washed up, broken down, beleaguered shell of what Aaron Rodgers once was. Since Rodgers came to the Jets, the Gangrene's record is just 10-18, and that counts. I'm counting last season. He got hurt in his first game. Of course, that changed the fortunes of the team, but nonetheless, he was still on the roster, still on the payroll. The Jets are only 10-18 since he came aboard. I've talked about this, and other people have talked about this. Woody Johnson gave Aaron Rodgers too much control. We know that. I've talked about this before. Okay, but it comes back to the calamity of errors that is the New York Jets. Why? Because remember, Woody Johnson never hired Robert Sala or Joe Douglas. That was his brother Chris during Woody Johnson's tenure as the ambassador to the UK. So now you have a guy who's come back. He has a head coach and a GM who he didn't hire. Recipe for disaster. Okay. And with that said, with all of the issues that I've talked about, and with all of the issues that anybody could see that Woody Johnson has as a team owner, is there a competent general manager who would want to be in charge of the Jets? I mean, it's to the point, yeah, the Jets are going to hire somebody. We know that. But it's not like people are beating down the door at Florham Park with their resume. It's not like people are flooding the Jets with emails, forwarding their resumes to say, "Hey, bring me in for an interview. Hey, I'm the guy to hire." No, because this is a dysfunctional franchise, and like I've said before, it starts at the top with the owner. You got a situation where whoever comes in to run this front office for the Jets, whoever they come in to be the head coach for next year, you might have a washed up Aaron Rodgers on your hands. Maybe the Jets can make him go away, but regardless, the Jets are still going to have to deal with that cap hit next year, whether or not Rodgers is on the roster. And I've talked about it, and I'm going to say it again. The 2024 Jets are the equivalent of the 1992 New York Mets as far as being the worst team that money could buy. The Jets have needed leadership, and that's what they were hoping that they were going to get with Aaron Rodgers. And Aaron Rodgers is not a leader. Phenomenal talent, but he is not a leader. And it's things that were able to be masked when he was a big fish in a small pond in Green Bay. Now he's front and center in the shadows of Broadway, and all of his flaws are front and center right now. All right. You also have a guy who doesn't have the skill set that he once did. He's still trying to win games in a fashion like he did 10, 12 years ago. And the bottom line is the guy can't get it done. I mean, you look at it aside from having to possibly deal with Rodgers, who wants to go in there and deal with Woody Johnson? Seriously, who wants to go in there and deal with Woody Johnson unless they are completely desperate to go out there and become a GM or a head coach in the National Football League? But make no mistake about it. If you're the Jets, this season cannot end quick enough for you because, again, this team was expected to contend for the Super Bowl at the start of the season. But the Jets now find themselves in an all but too familiar spot. And where is that? They're going to be picking early on in this NFL draft. The Jets are going to be picking in the top 10 of next spring's NFL draft, barring some unforeseen miracle over the last 2 weeks of this season. Now, I'm not here to sit up here and say that Joe Douglas as a general manager was Bobby Beathard or Ozzie Newsome or any other of the top successful GMs in NFL history. No, he did, hit on, some of his draft picks, a la Sauce Gardner at cornerback. But remember, it was these same Jets. It was the same Joe Douglas front office that went out there and took Zach Wilson at quarterback in the number 2 overall a couple of years ago in the draft. And of course, we know what train wreck ensued from that. And of course, the struggles of Zach Wilson at quarterback led to the Jets basically bowing down to the feet of Aaron Rodgers and letting him do whatever he wanted. Remember, when Joe Douglas was there, they had Sam Darnold. The Jets gave up on Sam Darnold. And of course, look at what he is doing now with the Minnesota Vikings. You have a New York Jets team that's set for their bye week for this coming Sunday, week number 12, but then they host the Seattle Seahawks in week number 13. The Geno Smith led Seattle Seahawks, another quarterback that the Jets franchise gave up on. Of course, that was pre Joe Douglas, but nonetheless, that's still under Woody Johnson's watch. And of course, I've talked about this before. The Jets have a horrid, and I mean horrid, history as far as going out there and trying to develop quarterbacks. Why? Because I feel like this franchise, maybe the fan base, maybe the media in New York City altogether, whatever, or separately, it's one of those where they keep thinking that they're getting the next Joe Namath. Every single time that they find a quarterback, Joe Namath is not walking through the door anytime soon to MetLife Stadium. And if he is, he's there to take some pictures, sign some autographs, maybe, be an honorary captain, but he ain't going out there to play football. The Jets have had issues, okay, for decades as far as developing and cultivating quarterbacks. This is why they went out there and moved heaven and earth to get Brett Favre back in 2008. It didn't work. This is why they moved heaven and earth to go out there and get Aaron Rodgers a couple of seasons ago. And 10, 12 years from now, if you're a Jet fan, I know you're probably hoping, please do not go out there and try to get a washed up Jordan Love. You got to stop taking the Packers garbage if you are the Jets. Literally. Okay. It's one of those where, again, house cleaning needed to be done at Florham Park. Robert Sala's gone, Joe Douglas is gone, but it's not the complete house cleaning that the Jets need because when the dust settles, okay, on the whole Joe Douglas situation as now the former Jets GM, guess what? Woody Johnson is still going to be the guy signing checks for this franchise. We've now seen people be held accountable for the garbage from the Jets this season, with the exception of Aaron Rodgers and one Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson fired Robert Sala after the 2-3 start. He pushed the panic button. He expected this team to rise to the occasion, and instead, the Jets have imploded. Okay, embarrassing loss after embarrassing loss. And again, the defense was the stronghold of this team. And ever since they let go Robert Sala, the defense has gone to the crapper. They had Drake May looking like a seasoned vet in the loss to the Patriots a couple of weeks ago. Kyler Murray destroyed them. And then Anthony Richardson, a guy who was just benched, a guy who was completing under 50% of his passes on the season, looked like Aaron Rodgers in his prime as he went out there and led the Colts to the comeback win over the Jets at MetLife Stadium just this past Sunday. So again, if you're the Jets, this season can't end quick enough. You've got 6 games to go. You've got Seattle. You're at Miami in week 14. You're at Jacksonville in week 15. You're home for the Rams. Week 16, week 17, you're on the road for Buffalo, and then you finish up at home with Miami. I know it's a flex game, week 18 to end the season. Honestly, if you're a Jet fans, you probably want that game to be at 9 a.m., kind of like a London game, so this way you don't have to deal with it. But nonetheless, changes are coming. I'm not optimistic that the changes are going to amount to a hill of beans because you got a new GM that's going to come in. Clearly, he's not attached or he's not going to be attached at the hip with anybody that is currently on this roster. So who knows what's going to happen? The Jets got to go out there. They got to get a GM. They got to get a head coach. They got to get a quarterback. But more importantly, they have to get leaders. That's the bottom line. So where do the Jets go from here? You're hearing reboot, you're hearing reset, you're hearing rebuild. It's kind of, the same song and dance for the Jets because we hear these terms all along. And the Jets are just a bad summer rerun at this point. It's the same old song. We're rebuilding, we're retooling, we're resetting, we're rebooting, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's just watching it. We're basically regurgitating the garbage that this franchise continues to spew out there. I feel bad for Jet fans. That's the bottom line. I mean, the Jet fans are kind of like the equivalent of Lucy moving the football every time that Charlie Brown goes to kick it. That's the best way to sum it up. This was a season that started with the highest of the highs, and we're not even at December, and the Jets are at the lowest of the lows. To quote a great friend of mine, he said when the season began, it was either going to be really great for the Jets or be historically bad. And I think that we are at historically bad. Why? Because Aaron Rodgers looks like a shell of himself. I mean, Green Bay propped them up, prettied them up, did whatever they had to do, and they basically sold the New York Jets a good old fashioned lemon. A season to forget for the New York Jets. Robert Sala's gone, Joe Douglas is gone, and who knows who's going to be gone over the offseason, as the 2025 Jets are going to look a lot different from the 2024 Jets. And I guarantee you the expectations are not going to be high either. Bad season for the New York Jets. It's almost over. Like I said, for Jet fans, you can't get to the finish line quick enough because the disappointment just continues for this franchise. You would want to say there's only one way to go but up, but if you're the Jets, you're up. Really ain't that high. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. You can check it out. Drop a line and be part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Pachangas, what's going on, my guy? Definitely appreciate the support and keep chiming in. And I'm going to keep trying to spit them out there for you. But as always, folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.